At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
My friends, who can be against what is happening with these ICE deportations? Who can be against what's actually happening? The people who are being deported, the dangerous folks who are being removed from the streets, the children who are being located. I cannot. Listen, I get it. We have turned this into something that it is not. We have allowed folks to manipulate the narrative and to make people think that if you're in favor of deportations, that you are racist or some such thing. But the reality, my friends, is that this is a good thing for the United States of America. This is a good thing for the rule of law, and it is about time that these things begin happening. We have had people in the White House who have totally ignored the rule of law, have done everything in their power to make sure that illegal immigration not only wasn't even addressed, but that it was allowed to be effectively a wide open border along the southern border with Mexico, my friends. And this is being addressed, and there are plenty of good things that are happening because of this. And I want to talk about those today. And I want to talk about reactions predictably from the left. And I know some of you don't like this. Some of you say, Todd, I don't like listening to what some of these lunatics say. And I get it. I understand that they live in a world filled with delusion and just outright insanity. But this is what we are up against. And dare I say this, we are at a point where we could have long-lasting political victory if these lunatics continue to say the things that they're saying and continue to make the political choices that they're making in response to this stuff, because the average person is tired of the shenanigans and the nonsense, and I want to get into that today, my friends. Before I do that, I want to remind you that MyPillow, Mike Lindell, they've been a partner of this program for a couple of years now. They want to express their gratitude to you for purchasing products from them, using our promo code, and just supporting them and the products that they create. They're a series of great products. I have quite a few of their products here. The pillow, the sheets, the towels. Oz loves the slippers. And they have a special now on their Percale bed sheets. You can get a set of these for as low as $24.98. These are breathable. They have a cool, crisp feel. They have deep pockets so that they can fit over any thickness of mattress. They look and feel great, my friends. And you can get these for a limited time for as low as $24.98. Also, for a limited time, MyPillow has decided when you place an order over $100, you're going to receive $100 in free digital gifts. Check it out, mypillow.com. Use promo code TODD. And you will get the Percale bed sheets starting at $24.98. You'll get discounts on other products as well. mypillow.com, promo code TODD. All right, I'm going to read you a couple of headlines here today as to what is happening with the deportations. Just a couple of headlines regarding the positive news and progress regarding deportations from this great nation. Now, before I do that, though, let me say this. I know that this has been a highly emotional issue for people for a long time. And I think that there's reasons for this, and I would say that the left, the seven pillars of propaganda, the media, they've been exploiting this. They've been exploiting this because they make this this narrative about individual people. They make it, they either directly accuse people who are in favor of deportation of being racist, or they make all sorts of suggestions that they are, my friends. This is not at all what this is about. And it's hard to convince some people of that. It's hard to convince some people of that. Martin Luther King said that he dreamed about a colorblind society. People were not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. The modern left says we don't want to pursue that path any longer. We want, the left says, to pursue a nation that only talks about people's physical identity. This is what the left does. This is how they divide and conquer. They make all politics about identity. What is your race? What is your gender? What is your ethnicity? What is your sexual orientation? What is your this? What is your that? And then you fall into these little buckets, these little groups, and then they say people in this bucket, they have this person speaking for them. They want to vote for their interest, which is X or Y or Z or whatever. Right? That's how this is done. And then they try to find ways. They try to find ways for Democrats to appeal to each group of voters that they've put in these superficial buckets, these superficial groupings. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. You combine, or I should say compare, that to what conservatism is. I don't care your race, gender, ethnicity. That makes no difference to me. We are all human beings created in the image of Almighty God. Every single last one of us. We all have the fingerprints, divine fingerprints upon us. We're not divine. We're not little gods or anything like that. We are created in the image of the perfect and true God, Yahweh, the creator of this universe, the sustainer of this universe. And he wants a relationship with every one of us. We are all special in the sense that we are created in the image of that unfathomably awesome, brilliant, powerful creator. And we have even if we choose to not have a relationship with him, we still have some of that, just his awesome power within us. Again, not supernatural, not demigods, nothing like that, but we've been created. We have, for example, we have the ability to be incredibly creative and driven and very intentional. We can do great things by showing love and compassion. Now, we've all, as the word tells us, sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, but we still also, at the same time, while that is true, we have divine fingerprints upon us. We're made in his image. We can see a little bit of who he is whenever we see some of these traits, that just a glimpse of who God is. It's in us. It's in our DNA. We're the only creature that he created that he said, let us, by the way, that's fascinating, let us make man in our image, he says to the triune God, Father, Son, and Spirit. At the beginning of creation, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But this is what makes humanity humanity. And it doesn't make us more or less human to be one race or the other. It doesn't make us more or less human or more better human or this or that if we're one gender or the other, certain ethnicity. Now, from one perspective, I think everybody's history, their family heritage is fascinating. I've said on here before, jokingly, but also seriously, in the sense that this is a fact, I'm the 13th great-grandson of Pocahontas, and I've made myself the self-appointed spokesperson for the family. And that's why I can say that we're not bothered when people like Trump, by the way, call Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. We're not bothered by that. We are more bothered by Pocahontas pretending to be Native American when she really isn't. And so the reality here is that the stories are unique. It's interesting to know who we are, where we've come from, the story of our ancestors. At some point, we share a common ancestor. You got to go way, way back, but the story of humanity is shared, but there's also stories. There's stories of individual families and so forth, and those are interesting and fascinating, and they make us part of who we are, right? And I like to hear those stories, and I think everybody's got an interesting story when it comes to that. But the bottom line is that those are not what make us better or worse or whatever. We are all, in the eyes of God, the same. And likewise, because we were created in the image of God, and this is what our founders got right. Our founders got this perfectly right. We all have a longing. We share a common desires as humans, and one of those is to be free. We were created for the purpose of being free. We were not created to be servants by force. We were created to be free people living out their identities, ideally in cooperation with and in friendship with the God of this universe. That is how we were created to live. And our founders realized this, and they realized this through studying history, through understanding philosophy, understanding human nature, understanding what it meant to live under the oppressive hand of the King of England. They understood this. They understood that we were made to be citizens and not subjects. They understood that we were created to be free, to make our own choices, to have our own list of priorities, dreams, aspirations, desires, wants. These things could be determined by the individual, by the family, and that is how we were created to live. And the founders set in place a society, a government that allowed for that in ways that had really not been allowed, I guess, to exist throughout the millennia because of the desire of certain men to rule over, by force, control other men, control other people. But we all have this desire to be free. All of us have a desire to be free. And it doesn't matter our race, gender. None of that matters. That's why when I talk about this, you will never hear me talk about race as though I'm talking to a group of people. I am talking to the shared perspectives, the shared commonalities of humanity. When the gospel, sharing the gospel of Jesus is the same way. It is. We speak to the commonalities that all people have, right? There's not a message of salvation for different groups of people. It is truth. The truth is we were created for a certain sort of relationship. It's been broken. It's been broken by our rebellion and our decisions to do things that were not good. And you have an opportunity to accept the forgiveness provided you, or you can run from it. You can do things your own way, but you don't tailor the message depending upon who it is that's hearing it. These are universal sorts of things. When you're dealing with truth, you can speak universally to all people. And so all people want to come and live in a place like the United States of America because it's how we were wired to live. And I've said that I understand this. I understand why someone in a poor country, or candidly any country, would want to come here and live in the United States. I understand that. I also understand, as I've said before, and as you understand, that this country cannot be open to every single person that wants to be here. There are, 8 billion some odd people on this planet. The population of the United States of America cannot, nor should it ever be, 8 billion people. That's just not the way that it is prepared to operate and work, at least in its current the way that it's currently set up. 50 states or the 57 states Obama had been to. But regardless, it's not possible for that to happen. And so we allow some people to come in legally, roughly 1 million a year, which in the grand scheme of things is a tiny percentage of the number of people who want to come here. But just because you want to come here does not mean you get to come here. And some people have a hard time expressing that thought because they feel like, well, I'm saying this as someone who was by chance or by good fortune or whatever born here. I get it, but why feel guilty? You see, there's a choice. This is something that bothers me to my core. If you're in a situation, if I'm in a situation where I have something, you hear people talk about privilege this, privilege that, whatever, as though privilege is something that you should feel ashamed of. Now I get the concept of what they're saying, white privilege. That's ridiculous sort of stuff. But I'm saying if you have blessings and you have the opportunity, if you're good at a sport, if you found your talent, if you have a way of connecting with people, you've got two choices in your mind. You can say, wow, I can see how this is a good thing and I am thankful for it and I'm going to put it to the best use I know how. Or B, let me sit over here and ruminate on this and feel sorry for all the people who don't have this, who can't be 7'4" like Victor Wembanyama, to hit threes, dribble between his legs, and dunk it, block shots that are 20 feet away from him. And you can say, wow, he could feel guilty for that, or he could excel, and he could make his skills the best that they can be, and entertain the people. The people like to see things like this. He's an NBA basketball player, for those who don't know. Phenomenal talent, phenomenally huge, athletic human being. But not all of us can be those things. And why you have the choice to feel guilty, to, like, you can't give it away, right? There's certain things you can't give away. You're as good looking as this host is. No, I got a face for radio, but you can't share, you can't say, well, this guy's better looking. You got to give some of his good looks to this guy. It's just, it's laughable because it's not the way that it works. And it's just the way life this side of heaven is. What we should be doing is focusing on the things we can do something about, which candidly, as I've said on this program, isn't to figure out how to allow as many people to come in here illegally as they want to just stay and do whatever they want without assimilating or without having any concern or care for the American language, the American culture, any of that. Just willy-nilly open borders, pandemonium, drugs, trafficking, and everything else. Or we can say, you know what? Let's elect people who actually want to take the ideas that made America great, because, by the way, it is ideas that made this country great, not something in our DNA. In fact, we were often kicked to the curb. We are the people that moved to this country were often the people that didn't fit in other places. So it's not the DNA, it's the system, it's the ideas. And why don't we focus, instead of apologizing to people for this, that, or the other, for not taking in enough people as immigrants every year in the eyes of someone else, why don't we export the ideas that made this country great so that more countries around the world would benefit from the liberty and the foundational truths that this nation is built upon? That's what we should be doing. Instead, we've got people, not now, but we've had plenty of people that apologized for this country over the course of time. Apologized. And listen, there's times the United States has done bad things. I'm not here to say that they haven't, but my goodness, if the United States was half as bad as people on the left say that it is, no one would want to come here in their right minds. Because if you listen to these leftists, these lunatics, which I'm going to play a soundbite here in the next segment, if you listen to these lunatics, they say that we hate people that aren't white, which is preposterous and idiotic. But I know that there's some fools out there that act like that. That stuff matters to them, and they think that they're better. And those people are acting like morons. That's just not the truth. I can't change what individuals think. I can say what the truth is, and the truth is that we were all created in the image of God, and that the foundations of this country are good, and more countries should embrace them. And that's one of the main jobs, I would say, of people who are serving in the executive branch, is to have the principles that we have embraced here embraced more frequently in more places around the globe, because that, my friends, is how you help people where they are, instead of saying you just come here however you want. And so let's look at some of these headlines before I do that. Got a couple minutes here this segment. Let me remind you of this, my friends. Soltea, S-O-L-T-E-A. Soltea is an all-natural supplement that has been clinically proven. Clinically proven means science has spoken. If you are pro-science, there's no way you can disagree with this, because the scientists have done the studies and they've said it. They have made it known that this supplement called Soltea has been proven to lower cholesterol. And folks, that means it may very well do the same for you. So if you're worried about your heart health, if you're worried about having high cholesterol, if you're looking for ways to keep your cholesterol down, if you're just aging like the rest of us, and you want to proactively take care of your heart, this is a great place to start. I take the product. You can too. It's very affordable. It's very safe. Soltea.com, S-O-L-T-E-A, Soltea.com. Promo code Todd will save you 50% off your first purchase and get you free shipping as well. You've got nothing to lose but those high cholesterol points. Soltea.com, S-O-L-T-E-A, promo code Todd. Let's look at some of these headlines. Headlines as to some of the good things that are happening because of ICE, because of deportations. Here's a headline in PJ Media. Homan, that's referring to the border czar, Tom Homan, says ICE found 10,000 missing kids. 10,000 missing kids. The Biden-Harris administration lost track of over 300,000 trafficked children due to open borders, but ICE is now dedicated to tracking down as many of those kids as possible. 300,000 kids just poof, lost. They don't have any idea where these folks are. Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, confirmed that ICE has rescued an impressive number of the kids so far, but there are still so many more to find. This comes just after an ICE raid identified multiple illegal alien children being exploited as underage workers at a marijuana farm in California, People's Republic of California. On Fox and Friends, Homan said, we're looking for over 300,000 missing children. We've already found around 10,000. Have you heard that anywhere? No, because the media is simply not covering it. He added, look, this should be a nonpartisan issue. Arresting public safety threats and national security threats, everyone should be on the same page on that. Rescuing children, it should be a nonpartisan issue. It absolutely should be a nonpartisan issue. Of course, when it comes to the radical left and how they view things, everything that is successful that Trump does is a very partisan issue, because they cannot acknowledge his success in any shape, manner, or form. I got to take a break here. A little bit long this first segment. Quick time out, my friends. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. How can you possibly be against some of these headlines? Here's another headline as it pertains to illegal immigration, in particular, how the ICE raids have done good things. This is at theblaze.com. Pot farm raid update. Trump's DHS, Department of Homeland Security, found convicted rapists and kidnappers working near migrant kids. Now, you may have seen this story, this ICE raid at a marijuana farm in the People's Republic of California. But they found during this raid convicted rapists and kidnappers. Now, did you hear me mention the race, ethnicity of these folks? I don't care who they are. It makes no difference to me. It makes difference to the left. I guess the left is concerned with protecting rapists and kidnappers if they are ethnic minorities, racial minorities, which is the dumbest thing I can think of at the moment. That's who they want to defend. That's who they excuse. That's who they act like Trump is trying to get rid of because they're not white. But these are terrible human beings. Again, as I've said on here before, As I've said on here before, if you are here illegally, without the permission of the United States government, you can be deported. Full stop. Period. End of sentence. That's it. Now, the Trump administration is focusing on the most vile, the most dangerous, those with records, those who have been arrested. This has been so distorted and misrepresented in the media. They're talking as though these people are not being given due process because they haven't been convicted of a certain crime. Trump says, for example, someone is associated with a gang, for example, Tren de Aragua or MS-13, and they say, well, they weren't convicted of it. They weren't given due process. You missed the whole point. The point is, are they a legal citizen, resident, someone who can be here legally? Nope. Then they can go. Trump's ICE deportations are focusing specifically on the people who are the most violent, people who they believe are associated with gangs, people who they have found out that have been arrested for crimes, sometimes violent crimes, sometimes people that have been convicted of violent crimes. This is who they are targeting, and when they find these folks and they realize where they are and they've got the resources to go after them, in spite of the fact that the state governments in sanctuary states and in sanctuary cities, the city governments, are not helping them whatsoever. In fact, they're trying to make things difficult. In fact, they're being encouraged by the media, by the left, by the Democrat Party, to obstruct ICE and their lawful responsibility to enforce the law. So these are the good things that are happening. These are good things. I mean, I consider having people convicted of rape who aren't even supposed to be in this country being deported. I consider that to be a good thing. I consider people who have kidnapped children. I believe that it's good if those folks, if they're here illegally, for them to be deported. That is a very rational, common sense perspective. I don't want people's rights violated, but that's not what is happening here. The only thing that you could say, and listen, let me finish my thought here. The ICE, they're wearing masks, oftentimes wearing masks, for understandable reasons, right? People want to kill these agents. In fact, you'll find, here we go, we got a MSNBC article here. I can't talk about this long because I want to play this soundbite I've got from these lunatics on The View. But this is a headline here. What's it say? MSNBC being MSNBC. Failing network pushes notion of lawful violence against ICE. So during an interview or during a segment on the program, someone said, well, these folks have masks on, and if you're being grabbed by people with masks, you might be justified in using, deadly force to protect yourself because you don't know what's going on here. So they're basically trying to carve out a caveat here to say that they're justified in using force. Now, the videos that I've seen, they all have badges, they all have vests, they do have their faces covered, and there's a part of me, candidly, that doesn't like that, but I also fully understand. We are dealing with people that we've had 10 people that shot at ICE agents. Now we had the commotion that happened on this marijuana farm. Now you've got an MSNBC host who's basically, or guest, I think it was a guest, making the case that these folks could defend themselves with the use of deadly force because they're not understanding they're being detained by ICE agents, which is not the case so far as I could tell. Anyway, but listen, if you want to have a conversation about that, I can understand having at least questions about that. I wish that didn't have to be the case, but I also don't want these men to be identified, have their faces identified, and then they be ambushed when they're off duty, traveling somewhere with their families. This is a real thing that we have to be mindful of today. But I understand at least the thinking there, at least, hey, that this is maybe not ideal, but it's also not ideal that there are people in this country that are trying to justify harming these folks. And there are plenty of them, by the way, plenty of these folks who try to harm or, I guess, defend the use of force to harm these agents. Now, all that being said, a lot of good things that are happening, right? Rapists, kidnappers, they're finding children. Those folks are being deported. They're finding children. They are making a lot of headway in this country, restoring law and order to this country. Here we go. The ladies of The View. I know some of you hate when I talk about the ladies of The View, but I'm going to play this because there are people out there. Now, I don't think that this is a big population, but there are some people who buy into what you're about to hear here. And I just want you to hear it. We'll talk about it primarily after the break because I'm not going to be able to probably get all this in this segment. But my friends, before I do that, think about this. Your investments are like seeds that you plant. They grow, they multiply, but are they bearing the kind of fruit that you want? At 48 Financial, they believe your money should reflect your values. They specialize in wealth management and biblically responsible investing, screening out companies that do not align with your faith. It's all part of their purpose-centered financial planning, helping you live a life of meaning and purpose. If you want to see if your investments currently, what you have right now, align with your values, all you have to do is go to 48financial.com/Todd. That's 48financial.com/Todd. You can take the assessment there, and you will get information back showing you how much of your current investments in line with your values, my friends, and then you can make decisions from there. 48 Financial, they're here to help you. Well, they're here to worry about your money so that you don't have to. All right, let's play this soundbite from The View. What they're trying to make these deportations about, I'm going to have to stop this midway through, but I just want to give you a feel for this. Here's the ladies of The View telling us basically that Trump is trying to make America into a white nation. Here you go. Okay. I swear to you, this is unbelievable sometimes. I literally just tested this. Ladies on The View here, are they going to
right
talk?
Processes, which we were told over and over and over, we're going to take violent criminals, and that is not what we're seeing.
Right. Anna, do you think that there are any undocumented immigrants at Mar-a-Lago?
Wait a minute. I just read to you a list of the violent criminals that Sarah Haynes, is that her name? Sarah something, said we're not taking. We absolutely are. Now they're going to ask Anna Navarro to chime in, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Actually, you may joke about it, but when Donald Trump was first running, there were reports and there were cases that were put out in the media of undocumented immigrants working in his resorts and his hotels that were working for him.
Right. Yeah.
So the answer would have been yes. But look, this is horrible. What's happening is horrible. If you are out there in the Everglades, driving out there and getting out of your car to take a picture like if it was the Eiffel Tower, you are a racist and you are a horrible human being.
Why? What? So there's people down here, Alligator Alcatraz, down in southern Florida. People are taking pictures, not taking pictures. It's on the front of, well, I don't know if this is on a magazine. This is a social media post. Headline, tourists have been seen taking photos outside of Alligator Alcatraz facility in Florida. You're a horrible person if you take a picture of that? I don't know about that. You're racist because of that? What is she talking? These folks only see race and everything. But that's where part of this story, I guess, originates, is that there's people taking pictures of Alligator Alcatraz for folks that have been detained prior to the process of deportation. Anyway, I'm out of time this segment. I want to play more of this because it gets really, as you can imagine, quite wacky. But we'll have to get to that after the break, my friends. Sit tight. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Third, final segment of this, the Todd Huff Show. It's a pleasure to be here, by the way. Want to mention to you, remind you, my friends, well, ask you, I guess, that do you know where your money goes after you spend it? If that answer makes you cringe, it may be time to check out Freedom marketplace. I mean, you go to give money to a business for a product and service. You need the product or service. You want the product or service. You hand the company the money. They provide the service. Maybe they did a great job. That's the way that capitalism works. But then you realize there's a chance that I am funding through my doing business with certain companies. I might be funding the causes that are completely antithetical, the opposite of what I fight for individually as a human being in this country each and every day. And so if you're concerned about that, Freedom Marketplace has a list of businesses that are pushing in the same direction you are. They're conservative. They've made a pledge not to support leftist candidates or leftist causes. There's not a litmus test here. We're not doing that. We're just basically saying you're not going to be fueling this radical left agenda and be a part of Freedom Marketplace. So check it out. freedommarketplace.net is where you will go. freedommarketplace.net, liberty and business for all. Let me play the rest of this soundbite. Ana Navarro on The View, eventually getting to how racist it is to want to deport people who are here in our country illegally.
And, you know, I don't think, and by the way, there's like Cubans who are legal permanent residents who are in that detention center right now, because this is not just about undocumented immigrants. When you are taking away temporary protective status, when you are putting legal permanent residents in detention and deporting them, when you are threatening U.S. citizens that you don't like, that you're going to take away their citizenship, naturalized ones, when you are talking about birthright citizenship and taking that away, this is not about going after the criminals and the gang members. This is about making America white again.
There we go.
And otherizing everybody who is an immigrant. Because think about this. Just think about this. At the same time that they are rounding up Latino immigrants, brown immigrants, they are opening up the doors for white South Afrikaners fleeing from a non-existent genocide. Yeah. And so look, this is about, I think, one, deporting people, and two, scaring people out of this country. Right. That is why he has sent people to a gulag in El Salvador, disappeared them, a gulag where people only leave if they're dead. That is why he's using military personnel in LA to go into parks where children are playing, to terrorize people.
And why are Republican congressmen putting up with that?
I'm going to stop it there. Listen, there are no permanent legal residents being deported. If they have been caught up in something and there's been an error on something, then that's not good. But that is not the purpose of this. What is she talking about? See, they have to go and create panic. They have to make it sound like Trump is just going out there, waking up and saying, if you're a brown-skinned, in the words of Ana Navarro, let's send ICE to their communities and just scare the living daylights out of them. That's what they want you to believe the narrative is. But they're not rounding up permanent legal residents. Now, if someone was given a status by Biden that's not legitimate, then yeah, that's certainly people that have been manipulating the system, or the government's been turning a blind eye to something. But people who are legitimately citizens, people who are legitimately legal, permanent legal residents, these folks are not being targeted by this. In fact, I'll do you one better. Unless there is an ICE raid that they are caught up in, they're not even being targeted unless they're involved in violent activities. The idea that they're going into schools and to get kids is preposterous. This is absolutely preposterous. This is not what's happening. She is misrepresenting this. She is lying about this. The only people that have anything to be afraid of are the people who are here without permission to be here. And forgive me for saying this, but why shouldn't they be? Why shouldn't they be? I'm not saying that people should live in fear, but if you're here illegally, you should be fully aware of the reality that if I get caught while being here illegally, I will be sent back to my home country. This is why people apply for asylum So much of this has been abused, right? If I can convince a judge that I'm afraid to go back to my country. And listen, there's legitimate cases of asylum, which, by the way, the Afrikaners who she is referencing, these white South Africans are in fact facing an incredible amount of persecution in many cases in South Africa. She says a genocide that's not happening. She's delusional. I don't know if she is so full of hatred and rage. She's blinded to the truth of what's happening here. And I can't play the rest of the soundbite. I don't have enough time. This, by the way, is on our website, ToddHuffShow.com, in the stack of stuff. But the realities remain the same, my friends. The people who are being deported, the people at risk of deportation, are the people who are in this country illegally. That means it doesn't mean that they just have to be a citizen. You can be here legally and not be a citizen, but you can be here on a visa. You can be a permanent legal resident. But if you're not someone with some degree of legal status, legal permission to be in this country, you are at risk of being deported. Plain and simple. No apologies will be issued here, my friends. Music's telling me it's time to wrap up, but good things are happening from these deportations. I have to go, though, my friends. SDG.